Hello, Make Boise Better friends. It's time for another analysis video. In this video, I'll be walking you through the Boise Stadium proposal survey and analysis and what we found. So, as many of you know, I like to start things off with a little orientation to make Boise better. So let's do that. So, what the hell is Make Boise Better? Well, thanks for asking. It is the easiest way to be a part of local solutions in Boise with only a few minutes a week whenever you can squeeze it in. And if you have access to email, you can contribute in a meaningful way to important local issues and help find local solutions. This is very different than if you've got to show up to a specific place at a specific time for some other kind of community engagement event. If you feel like hasn't been a good way for you to get involved and make a difference, but you want to, this is the easiest way you can possibly do that. Okay. Yeah, if you want to take our surveys, they're super short, really fast, and hopefully pretty interesting. You can click this do your part button. It'll take you to our sign up form. And once you do that, you'll be on the list. You'll get all the surveys sent to you on Monday, and you'll get all the analysis and results sent to you on Thursday, just 2 emails. All right, let's talk about this week's survey, the stadium proposal. So if you don't know, a developer has been proposing for at least over a couple of years now, in discussions anyway, to make a new stadium in downtown Boise that would be the home of the Boise Hawks that are currently in Garden City and would potentially also host a minor league soccer team and be a venue for other types of community events. They've also proposed having retail and residential developments being a part of that, and it would it's kind of proposed as like an urban renewal kind of thing too. Anyway, it's gotten people really fired up. There's a lot of people, at least I could tell from the news, really against it. There's people for it, but not a lot of data to be seen, just a lot of really fired up opinions in the paper or on the news. So I wanted to could we get some data on this? So anyway, the survey questions that I asked, well, a copy of the survey is linked here, and the overall results are linked here. So with my analysis, I'm going to kind of build on the overall results, kind of explaining my interpretation of those overall results. And if you segment it, by that I mean slice it by other demographic information to find, we can see if there's patterns with the way different groups of people answered. So let's do that. Okay, so I already mentioned kind of what I do with analysis, and I've already given you the context with the stadium proposal survey. So let's dig into the demographics. Who are the people that responded to this survey? In other words, who are the people we heard from and whose data are we looking through? So if you don't know, the Make Boise Better surveys, we track who responded which way, and what's valuable about that is we can pull in previous answers to previous questions as a way to segment these answers. So we can use fields that we didn't ask in this survey to segment this survey. That's a way that we can do sophisticated analysis without having to ask you like 100 questions on each survey, which none of you, probably including myself, would want to do that. So we've got a lot of gray bars here indicating question marks, meaning we don't know what gender a lot of these people are, or what their politics are, or their age, or their zip code. The reason for that is this week I did something new. Normally I only send these surveys out via email. Problem with that is it's gotten, we haven't been getting as many responses, and it's been harder for me to get people to subscribe. So I tried something new this week. I sent it via email, but then later on, I opened it up on social media. So we got a lot more responses, about double the responses we normally get, which is great, but there's a trade-off involved. A lot of those responses are people that we don't know who they are, and we can't pull in any other information for segmentation. However, a lot of those people that did it for the first time subscribed, so that's a way to kind of build the list. So some pros and cons here. But essentially, we have as much attributable answers as we normally do, and we have kind of bonus answers that are unattributable but also joined our list, so hopefully will help us get better data moving forward. Anyway, that's probably too much information. Anyway, so what do we have here? We've got about the same amount of men and women that we know that we can attribute. Like I said, we don't know about these question marks. Got more liberals than conservatives, got more young people than older people, and we've got more respondents from zip codes closer to downtown than otherwise, though we have lots of zip codes that responded. Those are in this other zips group. Okay. So first of all, two of the first questions we asked in the survey were, about how many times do you think you've probably heard news about the Boise Stadium proposal? And the next question was, how tired are you of the debates about the stadium proposal? So I had this theory or a hypothesis that the more news you've probably heard about it, maybe the more tired you're getting of hearing about it, because it's going back and forth and there's drama and people are getting pissed off, and maybe it just feels like more of the same over and over. So I wanted to kind of put those together and see how it broke down. So you can see, here's people that had never heard of it before. There were a few of them, and how they felt about tiredness. Surprisingly, one person is already extremely tired of this topic. And then you got gradually more people that have heard about it more times, and the biggest group is the group that's heard about it probably 10 or more times. But my hypothesis wasn't totally clearly visible here. I would have expected the biggest group to be extremely tired, then a little bit less very tired, and then kind of sloping down from there to the not at all tired group. That's not really true. There's certainly plenty of people that are really tired of this, but the biggest group was in the somewhat tired group, and there were still plenty that weren't so tired. My take is that this is a really important discussion, and people are willing to kind of be patient and want to stay informed because it's a big thing. Okay, so here's the overall results to the question. Do you approve of a new stadium development? And also in general. I asked in general because I wanted to get a sense of, do you think a new stadium would be good independent of where it goes? So it's been, originally it was proposed to be close to downtown at Americana and Shoreline. And then later it was proposed to go into the west end at Whitewater Park Boulevard and Main Street. So I wanted to ignore that for a second. We're going to come back to the location information. But in general, do you approve of a new stadium development? So we had the two biggest groups were strongly approve and approve. I think we ended up with about 55% approving, compared to about 30% disapproving and about 15% that are kind of neutral. So that's interesting in itself, because if you've been following the news, you might assume that most people are opposed to this. Certainly, seems like the most vocal people are the people that are opposed to it. But at least in this group of 131, more are actually approving. Okay, so let's break it down by some other fields and see what we find. So first I looked at age to see if there was anything here. So the question mark group is over here. We're not really going to talk too much about that, but you can see that's how, theoretically, a mixture of all these different age groups, kind of how they responded. And at a glance, it looks like there might be a story here that if you're younger, you're more approving of the stadium than if you're older. So if you're in this 50 plus category, which was everybody in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, the two biggest groups are you're neutral or you strongly disapprove. So there's not even some just disapproves, there's strongly disapproves. There's approvers in here, but they're less popular. It's the other way around with 20s, 30s and 40s. So in the 20s, it's about 70% that approve, between strongly approve and approve. It's about the same for in your 40s. Interestingly enough, there's quite a bit more strongly approve votes in that group compared to approve. But yeah, even in the 30s, it wasn't as clear, but still the most popular category was strongly approve. So maybe there's something there. This doesn't look like a slam dunk finding, so I'm going to say maybe there's something there, but I'm not going to put any money on it. If more of these question marks, if we had attributable data on them, maybe this would look different, because you can see there's plenty of disapproves in here, though plenty of approves as well. So I don't know. I'm gonna move on. Next, gender. Okay, what can we learn from gender? Well, it looks like if you add up the green bars for women and green bars for men, they're about the same. It ends up being, what did I say it was? Ends up being about, well, I think it ends up being about 55% roughly for both of them. But if you see it, it's the men were more likely to say strongly approve. The women were much more likely to say approve. And then women had orange and red combined, a lot higher rate of disapproving than the men did. And it's about 4 times as many that said strongly disapprove than strongly disapprove among the men. So same kind of thing. Like, I don't want to generalize too much from this. And again, if we had more question marks, gender information from the question marks, maybe we'd have a better sense. But I did do a little bit of Googling real quick, and it does seem like somebody did some research a few years ago on do men like sports more than women? I didn't read this whole thing. I skimmed the abstract. But anyways, it looks like that theory might have some legs to it. But I'm going to leave that alone for now. Okay. Next, I segmented by whether or not you're a Boise native. Boise native meaning you grew up in or near Boise versus a transplant grew up somewhere else. This is interesting because our Boise growth survey and analysis showed that of our respondents, Boise natives were more pro-growth than transplants were. I'm going to refresh that soon, so that I want to see if that still holds. But anyway, kind of looks true. I mean, look at this. It's like 70+% of the Boise natives approve, compared to 60% of the transplants that approve. But again, it's kind of like that men-women thing. The Boise natives are answering strongly approve a lot more, and the transplants are not doing strongly approve as much. So about the same amount are strongly disapproving, but that's flop on strongly approve versus approve is kind of interesting. Again, I don't know if this is probably not, this isn't a money finding yet, but maybe there's something there. Okay, this is the interesting one. Let's do it by zip code. And for context, both of the proposed locations are in 83702. Okay, so I think that the responses from that zip code probably hold a little bit more weight in my mind, because this is going in their zip code. This is going to go in nearby them. And so 83706 is the closest bordering zip code to both of the proposed locations. So knowing that, it's interesting to see that of the zip codes where we got the most responses from, these were 2 of the most positive, the most approving of a new stadium. So we're looking at 65 to 75% approval in those zip codes. Some of the least approving zip codes were 83704, which is like West Boise, and 83705, which is kind of like the depot bench out towards the airport. So that's interesting. We're going to dig into that a little bit more as we go. Actually, just about now. So anyway, next I asked, okay, now we got a sense of how you approve of a stadium development, but let's take location into account now. How important is that to you? Turns out, pretty much everybody thought it was pretty darn important. You know, it was only like 15% roughly that said it was only matters a little bit or less. Pretty much 85% said it matters more than a little bit. Okay, let's go back to the zip code view. So we've got the downtown approval rates, and we've got the West End approval rates. So not only did I ask them how much they approve of the stadium in general, I had them break it down by the different locations. And almost across the board, everybody preferred the West End. So 83712 was an exception. More people approved of the downtown location. They're in the East End, and probably pretty much nobody needs to drive through the East End to leave a baseball game unless they live out there. But besides them, everybody pretty much thought the West End's a better spot. These other zip codes together didn't change, so I'll note that. But okay, let's go back to the two zip codes that probably matter the most: 83702 and 83706. 83702 increased about 30% in approval rate. That's pretty wild. That's the biggest jump for any of these zip codes. Oh, look, he's here. Hey, bud. So they like it a lot better. Good to know. 83706 is also a lot more into the West End, but we're talking about a 10% difference there. So, okay, West End seems to be much more popular. Okay, next I talked about the top concerns and opportunities with this whole development. I asked people to rank them. So there was a clear top concern here: financial. How would Boise pay for this? That is definitely the top one, and that was reflected in the comments too. People thought, if this is a good idea, why does it need government subsidies? It should just be paid for with private dollars. So that seemed to resonate across our respondents. Interestingly enough, affordable housing and influencers, the way this process is being handled, were the least prioritized concerns out of everybody. Traffic was second, but by a pretty big margin. Okay, what about opportunities? No clear standouts in this, really. If anything's a standout, it's that development, more amenities and investments in the neighborhood, was the least prioritized. The top three were all pretty much tied, with culture, more shared experiences for Boiseans being kind of having a slight edge. All right. My next analysis here is comparing two questions, kind of nerdy. This is like a kind of a survey methodology question. On the left, we have, do you approve of a new stadium development? We've got two big peaks: the approvers and a few people neutral, and then the strongly disapproves. But when I asked more or less what I think is the same thing a different way, I got quite different answers. So the other question was, do you believe a new stadium would make Boise better? And instead of kind of having like a U-shaped chart, which is what we had in the approval, kind of have like almost like a normal distribution, like a bell curve, with most people kind of being in the middle and then a few people on the outliers. So why? Well, I've got a few theories. I think maybe it mattered that where the order of these questions were. So the approved question was asked at near the beginning of the survey. And the believe question was was near the end of the survey. So maybe going through the survey, thinking about some more nuanced questions, thinking about the concerns and the opportunities, maybe people kind of warmed up to the idea or became a little more mellowed or moderated in their point of view. Or maybe the wording just kind of lended itself to a bigger picture or more perspective on the topic, and people kind of mellowed out their answers and weren't as kind of extreme. Anyway, that's kind of nerdy. If I took more statistics classes, maybe I would have a better answer. Not statistics, research methods. Took a few, but I'm not a super expert. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And that's it for charts. Down here are our comments. I encourage everybody to check these out. I always learn so much from the comments, and I highlight the ones that I think are the most interesting or thought-provoking or representative, and I try to bold key phrases to help you skim them so you can find ones that look particularly interesting to you. But this will help you get a sense of why some of the people that think differently than you think that, or you might get some reasons that back up, help you think through your own position or whatever. So check that out. We've got answers to the question of, on this, what do people pay too much attention to? And then on this, what doesn't get enough attention? So really interesting stuff there. Thank you for everybody that took the survey. We've got our "if you build it, they will come" GIF. Couldn't help myself. Yeah, and as always, if you read this analysis and thought it didn't make any sense to you, it wasn't representative, I didn't hear from enough variety of people or enough people, you might be right. Please click this link, subscribe to Make Boise Better, weigh in on the issues yourself, and encourage everybody that you think might be interested to do the same. The way this gets better is when more people and more variety of people respond. We can have a much bigger positive impact and help everybody be better informed. So thank you much. Stay tuned for next week.